Good morning. So, as you said, this panel is about insistence to the resistance of digital change in school districts. And I'm AJ from STEMscopes. We're a digital curriculum provider, science curriculum for schools right now across the country. And I can tell you as an account manager for this company, insistence to the resistance is key to my success as a sales rep. I encounter resistance to digital change every single day. I talk to school districts all over the country who, first when they hear it's a digital science curriculum, oh no, that's not for us. We don't have one-to-one devices in every classroom. Well, that's okay. We don't require it, so we have to work through that together. Or I have that one teacher that is just not going to be able to do it, so nobody can have this digital curriculum, and so we have to work through that with them. So I'm really happy to be facilitating this conversation with these three individuals today, exploring more about their perspective on being insistent to the resistant. So why don't we start here with Dewayne, introduce yourself, and we'll go down the line, and then I'll ask you some questions.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dewayne McClary. I am the Director of Digital Learning and Innovation for the District of Columbia Public Schools. I'm happy to be here.
Good morning, I'm Bockwoldt, Director of Technology Services, Township High School District 214, Arlington Heights, Illinois. We have about 12,100 students, all grades 9 through 12.
Good morning, I'm Kristy Sailors. I'm Director of Educational Technology for the Houston Independent School District. We have a digital curriculum 9-12 in all of our high schools.
Great. First question, we all know that resistance to digital change comes in various forms, so I'd like to know what that looks like for you. Dewayne?
For us, when we took on the task of digitizing our curriculum and utilizing a lot of digital curriculum, we saw two different forms of resistance. We saw it, one from our veteran teachers, saying, I was never trained on this, don't know what this is. And then we also saw another resistance from our more younger teachers that maybe 5 years in or less. They were actually utilizing the digital curriculum as a babysitter. So we were trying to figure out what is this? There's two different dynamics. And for us, we also had one or two resistance from some administrators so that we had to get over. So we found different ways to tackle that. One, through evaluations, two, by tying it in and embedding it into curriculum, and then three, also having parent workshops to help parents understand, we're not just putting your kid on a device and they're going to sit in the corner, there's going to be some integration pieces here too.
I think the resistance is real. It's out there for a reason. Resistance to me, it comes in many different shapes and forms, from the curriculum, the software, to the publishing companies and the digital curriculum itself. What we have seen is some of the processes not being vetted properly, and what happens is something's adopted, it's not tested, it's not vetted properly, and then it doesn't work properly. So then we got to pull it back, and there's where that resistance comes in. So we have to build systems and put systems in place and processes in place that work to help us vet and help those teachers be part of that process. I think they need to be part of that integral process for the adoption of these tools that are being used in a classroom. If we don't have the boots on the ground coming to the table, then we're missing the whole point of it.
I would agree the resistance is real. It looks different everywhere. We found resistance with some of our textbook publishers. We have a set of criteria, a set of standards that we give to all the publishers that says this is what the criteria has to be. If you're going to play in HISD with our digital curriculum, you have to meet these standards, and you have to provide us these links, and it has to be vetted, and all of these. Literally, it's pretty good, thorough criteria, so we thought. But yet, the individuals who sometimes make the decisions about the selection of digital resources don't necessarily follow the list because they think it's a little too much. So we end up with textbook companies who, as we shared earlier, gave us usernames and passwords for all our kids. So not only do our kids have to log into the learning management system, using Active Directory, which they should through single sign-on, but now they also have to navigate and maneuver a different set of usernames and passwords to get to the textbook that's already in the course that we already vetted that they know that they have to get to. So it's that, the resistance oftentimes doesn't come from inside, it comes from the external people that we deal with as well.
I think that's a great point, Kristy, when you talk about those sign-ons, because it's very difficult for the staff to navigate all these different tools and how to access them. It's difficult, and it's not fair to students and to students to be able to have to look at a sheet to say you log into this tool this way, you log into this tool this way, with different passwords. You know, we have the single sign-on solutions that are out there, but not everybody's adopted those. But I like the fact that Houston has taken the point of telling the vendors you need to work with our systems instead of you having to work with their systems all the time. And I think we, as an education community, we have to have a larger voice to stand up and say, you know, these are the systems we have, these are the standards that are in place already. Let's work together and partner together to make this happen.
So I hear you guys talking a lot about, as leaders, working with vendors and being a voice for what you need as the consumer for these digital programs. What about leadership, flipping that around and looking at the leadership within the district? What kinds of things are you doing, or do you think need to be done from a leadership perspective to overcome this resistance?
I think there needs to be more focus on professional development. What we're finding is that when a lot of teachers come to us, either they've gone through a system, an educational system that did not teach them anything about digital learning or blended learning, or you have educators that come to us now that don't understand, how do I manage this? So which has been a big pushback for us. Like, how do I ensure that kids aren't going on YouTube and doing something they shouldn't be? I'm only one teacher, and you require me to monitor and be in charge of these 20 kids. So we've had to come back and look at how do we come up with a system, vetting systems that will allow teachers to actually manage and lock kids down into applications. Another piece from our leadership I wish we had was leaders that actually understood digital learning, that understood the power of it. And I think a lot of leaders I've heard throughout our area in DC is that they feel like it's a replacement of teachers, which is not true. This only way digital curriculum works is if it has to work alongside the teachers. And
empower the teachers.
Exactly.
Yes.
We heard the same thing, Dwayne, about taking away my job because now
Yep.
you get this digital curriculum. I don't see that happening right now. We've been on this path since 2010. And what we said right from the very beginning is there's two things. Number one, we have to have a shared vision. From the board, from the superintendent, to the associate superintendent, principals, teachers, support staff, they all have to be part of this vision to move forward and transform. And then along with that, we had to make sure that as we adopted instructional materials, we were looking at digital alternatives first and foremost before going to whether it be a textbook or some other type of courseware that we would have. So we made a conscious decision, but I still think in our case, I think we get a little bit tighter as far as that vetting process and making sure that we're testing all those tools. So if your courseware, we're adopting it, we're looking at it. You know, how do we vet that? How do we bring you in as a partner and say, we want to pilot this first and make sure we work out all the kinks, because as soon as you get in that classroom, you're losing instructional time. And we've seen that time and time again where we bring things in because we've got a lot of things on our plate, to Dr. Zimmerman's point. We have a lot of things on our plate. They're thinking about a lot of different things. They have a lot of different points they have to hit during their curriculum, and they're focusing on that. And if we're not taking the time to vet some of these tools out and we get them in, then they're losing instructional time in the classroom, and then it's going to come back and be a failure. So we have to figure out ways to vet those tools properly to make sure they're successful in the classroom as a team, as a shared vision for the entire district.
If I could, if I was in charge, I would make sure that all of the teachers had the opportunity to take an instructional design course so that they know what it's like to build online courses. I would also make sure that they had the opportunity to take an online course as a student, not as a teacher, but as a student, so that they understand, what do you mean it takes 19 clicks to get this video to work? Or why do I have to submit this? Or you uploaded this as a PDF, but you told me I needed to edit it as a Word document. So all of those things, if they could have that experience as a student in a digital environment, I think that would help open some doors for us, make some conversations happen at that level, and give them an understanding of, an instructional design concept and how you do things in a digital environment are completely different than how you do things in a face-to-face environment.
I would also add, one thing that we did in DC, what we were noticing with the leadership is when they would go and visit these schools that were utilizing digital curriculum, they would come back and say, oh, I don't even know what I saw. Like, I didn't see good pedagogy and teaching going on. So what we had to do in our team is we had to align and create guiding documents with the teacher's evaluation tools, so that when an administrator or an instructional superintendent or a leader from central office walked in, they had a guiding document. So when they did saw station rotation, or they did see kids collaborating on devices, or a kid in the corner, personalized learning, maybe working on their fluency, they understood what they were seeing. So we had a lot of teachers that were reluctant because they were actually getting points knocked off on their evaluation because an administrator or a leader came in and didn't understand the transition to digital learning. So
one of the things I do like about our process is the teachers get together with their divisions and they make the recommendations to bring forward for adoption, and then it's vetted out, from there. So, I like the fact that we have the teachers part of the process, because they need to be. They're going to be using these tools, and they're exploring. We want them to explore. We as administrators, we can talk about, oh, this is great. We see this great tool out here. We come to these conferences. That'd be a great tool to use. But it's them that are on the ground doing this work, and we need to get them more involved. Because if we have them more involved and we get that ownership and the stakeholder ownership, then there's going to be more of an adoption or acceptance of it.
Another thing I'd like to add is we do a great job at selecting digital resources. We do a great job of getting teacher input into what the materials are going to be, but what we don't do a great job as, and I think we could do better, is actually bringing in that textbook vendor and having them walk through a group of teachers with the online coursework that goes with that and the digital book, so that they could see how it's going to work, and they could get that feedback from the teachers that said, yeah, that's never going to work. Those kids are never going to do that. Or, no, those kids really are going to do that. And that feedback and interaction between the actual experts in the classroom who work with those kids every day to that textbook vendor would help, I think, alleviate some of those complaints that we get with the digital resources.
What we've seen, Kristy, is kids are so savvy nowadays with different technology tools. While it may not be the educational tools, it's social media, it's gaming, whatever, we've seen the kids that are able to help each other out and help the teacher out in the classroom. Mm-hmm. I think that's really cool, because these are the kids that are teaching the teacher how to use some of these tools. I think that's pretty amazing. These are the kids that we have to look to because they're our future.
Mm-hmm.
So that actually leads into this next question about how is digital change digital change coming into your districts and your schools? How is that changing the role of the teacher and the learner and the administrator? And what resistance is there in that area?
Yeah, we've seen a huge influx of digital content in our district. Not just digital curriculum, but we're also looking at productivity tools. So we're not just putting kids on curriculum and letting them sit and get. We're actually allowing them to be creators and collaborators. So what that has forced our teachers to do is to, one, they have to step back. Now they've turned into facilitators, and I will tell you that was a huge shift to let teachers let go. That's something they did not like to do. But when they did let go and they saw the power of it, they were very enthused, and they're now promoting it even more. One thing we did in the district is we had a few pilot schools that we did one-to-one applications in, and we had a few pilot schools that were our technology integration schools, which were doing the productivity also, and having those models so that when they came in and saw, like, oh, this is how this works with the curriculum. Oh, I didn't know I could do this with unit 1.5. This is great. So having those models and sharing out that and creating spaces for them to share and collaborate, teachers, that helped us change the trajectory for our students.
What I've seen in our district that's been pretty amazing is those teachers that, say, had their feet in the sand, not ready to move the needle yet. What they would be seeing is the other teachers in other classrooms and the cool things that they're doing to engage the students and get them involved. And then we have something called peer observation groups, where teachers will go to another classroom. When they have time, they'll just observe, and then later on they'll break down and see what worked, what didn't work. But what happened through the whole process in the last 8 years or so is that some of those folks that are getting ready to retire in a few years that don't want to change, they're like, I want to do this. This is really good for my kids, and it'd be good for my classroom, and they've adopted it. So, I mean, you see that snowball effect. You know, that goodwill starts flowing across the system, and now we see across our system, not just teachers in a school talking, but teachers across the district talking. And I think that's been pretty amazing for us.
I think no educator, we didn't get into this business to be a resistor. We got in this business because we love kids. So I don't think any teacher said, I'm not going to do this because that's the right thing to do, and no, it's not going to happen. That's not how it works. They don't want to participate. They're resisting because they're uncomfortable. They're unfamiliar with it. They don't know what it's like to be in an online environment. Are they trying to replace me? The kids are going to do something and I'm going to get evaluated for it. So I think it's the mentality or the environment or the culture of, this is not replacing you. This is hopefully making your life easier. This is engaging the students. This is allowing the kids to move ahead if they need to, personalize them for themselves. So I always think that if we love the teachers and we support the teachers, whether that's PD, hand-holding, team teaching, we sit in the back of the rooms a lot of times while they're rolling out the digital resources, and we just smile. They just want somebody to know it's going to be okay, and I am not judging you because you're not comfortable with this right now. So I think it's changing the culture in a way that's safe for them, regardless if they're brand new out of college and they grew up with Google, or if they're my age and we learned to type on a typewriter.
But you know, I think it's also very critical for the vendors to be able to have the list or school districts of your size and shape, to be able to have those teachers come over and maybe visit some of those schools in the local area to show them how this will change things and how it works to get more acceptance of it. I think vendor community, that's one of the things I always ask our vendors is, you know, give me a list of those school districts that are our size in the local area, even if it's adjacent state is fine. We'll go take a visit and see how it's working and being adopted there, because that way you're going to show them the how and the why.
Yeah, we had actually an example. I was visiting a school in Northwest DC, and we had a teacher that was kind of reluctant, didn't want to utilize this digital curriculum. And I was walking with the principal, and the bell rang, and the kids were running, like racing down the hall, trying to get to their ELA class. And so the other ELA teacher on that team, she was like, why are they running the class? They never run the class. That's because this teacher was utilizing the digital curriculum and utilizing applications and the assessment tool, Kahoot, to kind of help them understand. And so the principal was like, these kids don't run in the hall. What is going on? So the teacher left her post and she asked us, could you stand here? Because I want to go see what's going on. And when she saw that that teacher was utilizing Kahoot with her kids and how they were utilizing digital curriculum in the classroom, we actually ended up holding her class for the whole period, because she was floored to see that these kids were actually engaged. These kids actually loved to go to class. And she said, I want my kids to run to class too. So that also helps change teachers, like seeing that actually happen in their building, not just me having to go to another place to see it. But
And how's that teacher doing today?
Oh, that teacher, she's now working with that younger teacher to figure out how can I do this to her.
Perfect.
Can you just copy that and send it to me?
Dwayne, that's such a great example. That's such a great example, because I relate to that. We have one teacher I was visiting in biology class. He had 504 students, and the students were basically getting 57% on the first semester finals. And as he used different digital tools with the devices that we use, as he's using the different tools, what he was able to do is move that percentage up to 75% the following semester, from 57% to 75%, because he was giving those kids instant feedback that he never had before. He would bring that Kahoot or whatever it was up on the screen and see where the kids mark, they got the scores, and where those kids didn't quite hit the mark on that question, he can go back and drill into it and then review it one more time so the kids understand what that question meant.
We developed a couple of options for our teachers because we know that they're resisting for a reason. We don't need to know their reason, we just know that they're resisting for a reason. So we had some conversations with some teachers and we said, okay, what is it that you don't like about technology? What is it that you don't like about digital resources? And had some really good heart-to-hearts with them, and they finally, the group came together as a consensus and said, I don't have time to learn all this stuff. I don't care, nor do I want to. We said, okay, what if we switched it around, we made you the facilitator, we gave the students the resources with how to, time to learn it, time to teach each other, and you just make sure that everybody's gonna walk out of your classroom having learned something that day. So we put together some tools. We call it tools for tasks, and it's I want my students to, started with that prompt, and they can literally pick, what am I going to do today? If I need to express my learning through animation, here's some tools that I can teach myself how to use as a student to show my learning. Or if I'm going to take notes, or if I'm going to collaborate or create a video or whatever. And we found that with that group that at least started that conversation with us, that they were like, thank you.
Yeah.
All I have to do is show up, give them the prompt, make sure they understand what the expectation is, and watch. And that's helped with some of that resistance.
Yeah.
I think trying to find that balance is key, because everybody's got competing priorities, and as they're saying to you, I don't have time for this.
No.
They have all these other things going on, so we have to, as administration, we have to find that balance with them, with their feedback, and figure out where we can maybe fit those things in and see if there's some other things we can take off the plate to help facilitate that.
Yeah, there were two other things. So we assessed our teachers. We wanted to know, why were you reluctant? And there were two big things that stood out for us. One, the reliability of the technology. So, of course, if you turn it on and it's not working, they're going to throw it out the window. I'm not doing that ever again. So we had to make sure that the internet was reliable, the devices were reliable, and that also making sure with the vendors that you're going to be on 99.9% of the time. Mm-hmm. The second thing was professional development. A lot of our teachers felt like they were all at different levels. So a teacher that was at a novice level and they're in a room with an expert, like they felt like, I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to look dumb. So what we did is we actually did some personalized learning tracks. So we assess them before they come in, and then we place them in their different groups so that you don't feel like you can't ask a question because you don't want to look dumb or anything like that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fear underlying the resistance for individual teachers that have their feet in the sand, like you said. So we're kind of preaching to the choir here. It's a self-selecting group in the room today. We're not the resistance ourselves. We have to go back and fight it, though. What's your biggest piece of advice, or what are you going to go back and continue to do that we should all go do as your recommendation to the audience here today?
For my team, something that we've done and we will continue to do is build the trust with teachers and administrators. So with my team, it's 5 of us, and I require that 45% of your time you're not at your desk, you're actually out in the field supporting schools. How do you know what you're providing and pushing out is working if you're not out there seeing it actually happening in classroom? Because it's a different story sitting at our desk and writing policy and actually being out there and feeling the pulse of what's going on in the school. So my team does that 45%, sometimes 50% of their time. They're out in the field supporting schools and teachers. I also practice what I preach. I also give that example and go out and do that. And that way we've been able to build the trust. We're also out there with you. We're in the field, we're in the trenches with you. So it's not me just preaching to you. I'm actually showing you how we do that. So that's something that has really helped us. Another piece for us that we will continue to do, and I would suggest you guys do, is I have 4 specialists. The specialists actually, they actually sit on a content team, and their job is to integrate the technology throughout the curriculum. So we just adopted Eureka Math a couple of years ago. So we actually create aligning documents that'll go along with our ST Math or our Reflex Math. And we also do aligning documents for our Alexias and our Read 180s. So making sure that a teacher could see that transparency that it does work. Like you can utilize, if you're doing sequence 1.5 in math, you have to also do unit 5 of Lexia aligned with that. So seeing that alignment was important.
think it goes back to what I said before about keeping the teachers involved with that entire process, keeping them part of it. And then also the marriage between technology and teaching and learning, making sure that marriage is tight so things can be, these adoptions can be very successful, because as a combined effective group, we're all better as a whole than as one. So bring the people together, and sometimes in our district we move a little bit slower on these adoptions. I say we circle the wagons quite a bit, but we do that for a reason, because we vet it. We want to make sure it's successful. We're not afraid of failing, because we learn from failures, but we want to make each systematic change better than the last one.
I think moving forward, we're going to get better. We will get better. We're going to get better at loving our teachers, providing what they need, having those conversations, making sure that we have as many supports in place as possible for them. Nothing happens in the district without the teachers. Period, end of story. So if you don't have them on your side, or if you don't have them actively engaged with whatever we're trying to do, we've lost everything. So continue to love the teachers and identify resources that help them through their resistance, if you will. And I think we need to do a better job, and we talked about this earlier and yesterday, that we need to make sure that everybody is at the table when we start having conversations about purchases, adoptions. What about, could we, because what we find, and I think most of us agree, that oftentimes we make a decision, we purchase something, and we forget that it needs some kind of back-end support through technology. And then we're mad because the technology folks can't make it work by August 15th because you didn't tell them that they even bought it and it needed to have 14 integrations from 6 systems by August 1st, or whatever that might be. So we're going to do better at having those conversations, hopefully, please, so that everybody's happy when we go through the digital, initiative, whatever that might be. New textbook, whatever.
Yeah, those silos and those pockets, you brought up that great point, because we've been talking about this the last 2 days. And one of the things I always say, if you're not at the table, you're not on the menu. If we're not on the menu, we're picking up pieces after the fact.
Right.
So to your point, it's being part of the entire process to make sure it's a successful adoption and process altogether.
Right. We don't want to be IT, my world. We don't want to be the naysayers. We don't want to stop progress. We don't want to stop anything. We just want to be able to be at the table and have the
Absolutely.
yeah but conversations. Or hold on a minute, did you understand that by purchasing this, we needed to do 98,000 other things before the kids can even see it on Tuesday? So just making sure that everybody knows that we're here as a support and we want to make it work, but we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah, I agree. Our IT team, we have a great collaboration. It's funny because a lot of other school districts, they struggle with the IT and the ed tech side. Like, we have our back and forth, but I can say we don't do anything without each other. And what I have been very grateful for is the collaboration and the shared interests we have. But also, they also remind us of, hey, we already have that application. Why are you duplicating it? Mm-hmm. So, like, right. They're always sharing with us, like, this is a duplication of this. Maybe we can utilize this in that way, save you some money, save you some funding. But they also come to us about, like, hey, we're about to push something. When is the best time to push it? Like, 12 o'clock in the day is not the best time to send an update for Apple. So we always joke about it. Our relationship is like a bus. I'm the driver, you're the wheels.
Oh, that wouldn't work.
Well, we've come to a consensus. It works for us.
I'm going to let you have that.
As long as nobody's under the bus, I think we're okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we're not going there.
We're not going there.
So maybe you have some thoughts or some questions for our experts on being insistent to the resistance. Right here.
Yeah. Do you have any influence with teacher education at colleges? I mean, we just did the same thing we experience all across the world when we travel. People come to us as the systems are not preparing teachers to come and do grasp.
Yes.
Where do you make the difference? I mean, do you go to universities and say, hey guys, you need to do some changing?
So about 2 years ago, what we were noticing is that a huge amount of our teachers were going through either Trinity University, another one was Maryland, University of Maryland. They were going through their teacher education program, and then they were coming to DC. So what we were noticing is that they had no sense of blended learning. They had no sense of what this even means when we say, you know, looking and reading the data every day from the program. So we actually reached out to those 2 universities because those were the biggest universities that were sending teachers our way. And a part of their education program, my team actually went and presented 2 days to talk about, in DCPS, this is what it means when we say tech integration. This is what it means when we say blended learning. And we've had that collaboration now going back and forth with the University of Maryland. And actually one of their professors actually works for DCPS. She's an adjunct. So we just kind of, hey, can we tap in? And so once every year we go out and we do that training and talk about the blended learning and talk about some of our success stories and ask them questions around, like, when you get your first classroom and you're given all of these digital content, what are you going to do? And then we share with them. And then we also talk about the evaluation piece. We talk about the piece where the at-home piece, like internet access, the digital equity piece. So that's kind of where we've started, and we've seen some growth.
We've been very fortunate in our district that our Associate Superintendent of Teaching and Learning is the chair of the Community College Board in Illinois. So he can go and have the talk about, you know, that change that needs to happen. And we also developed a career pathway for teaching in our district. So students go in this pathway and they go off to college, they are guaranteed an interview at our district once they finish, even if it's at the community college level first and then forward. But we have these things in place, so we're very fortunate. Now this may change with the new governor, but at least he's been out there talking about what's needed at the collegiate level.
I have not had the opportunity to talk to the local universities or colleges here. I've been at Houston a very short time. My previous life, I was in Kansas, and we partnered with the local universities and community colleges, and we did exactly that. We went in and said, here's what's going to happen when you graduate. Here's what happens when you walk into a classroom in our school district. Yep. Did you know that all of your kids don't get a textbook? It's all online. Mm-hmm. There's nothing, they can't highlight, they can't make copies, they're not going to write notes. It's all digital. And how are you going to be prepared for that? We go and talk to them, or we talked to them about the resources that we have available. We made sure that anything that we shared with our K-12 students, that those university students also had access to, so that they could start thinking about that and working through some of those things before they went out to become actual teachers. So having those conversations with professors, faculty, being able to talk to practicing teachers or administrators working through that superintendent certification. How are you going to evaluate that teacher? You don't know anything about that digital environment. And so making them aware, having the conversations helped with those kinds of discussions, but not nearly enough.
Correct.
No.
I have a question. You talked a lot about stakeholders and visioning and everything else, and everybody being at the table. How many of you had students or alumni at the table?
Depends on the table.
Yeah. So we have a student panel that reports directly to our chancellor. She meets with them every 2 months, I think. Yeah, every 2 months, and they actually provide feedback. So we're actually a part of their table. So we sit at their table, and they talk about the uses of technology. Why are you blocking this for your filtering system? We actually currently doing a pilot. We're about to become a one-to-one school district. So we have a pilot of several different devices out there in schools, and actually students are going to give us the feedback on which device they prefer to utilize with the curriculum.
That's such a great point, because within the last 2 years, our superintendent does meet with students every couple months as well, and the AP students had come to him and said, hey, we're not using our devices because we don't have enough AP curriculum on the devices. So that raised some flags and said, you know, what are we doing here? Why don't we have enough of this AP curriculum? So that's one of the things that we've been diving into the last couple of years a little bit more to see if we have a better adoption rate with those digital materials.
Our curriculum folks and our instructional tech team have direct contact with students every day, all day long. So I'm sure that they're getting feedback. I know that we get communication sometimes that such and such students at this specific school really think this is awful. So can we try to find something else? So I know we're getting that feedback. Ed tech in the IT world, we're not, because we're not in the trenches every day with those kids having that opportunity. But the curriculum team and the instructional tech folks are there all the time.
Yeah. We also survey our students at the end of the year for their input about schools. I get a lot of emails from students. One, most importantly, recently, when we were turning on our Office 365 accounts, they had it blocked. We didn't know this, that they couldn't email outside of the district. And that was a huge thing for our seniors and our juniors because they were applying for college. And so I got an email and they were like, please explain to me why you're blocking this. I'm going to go to the Washington Post. So of course we're like, so we teach our students to be good citizens also.
Good comeback.
Which is a good and a bad thing.
Well, you were safe. They couldn't email the Washington Post.
But they were emailing using their personal accounts.
Yeah.
So we didn't know that. We didn't know that was a setting that we had to turn on. So we turned it on immediately. And now our students can email back and forth. So students have our access to our emails. Everything is listed. And we also share our contacts, not with just the principals or the teachers. We also share our email contacts with students. So I get emails from students sometimes once or twice a week.
If you were to do an audit of teachers in your district, and on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being not very comfortable with technology at all versus the 5s who are very gung-ho about technology integration and using it as a means to facilitate learning, authentic learning in classrooms, what would you feel would be the comfort level of the teachers across your district? And as an aside, what supports do you have in place to improve teachers' competency and comfort levels with using and integrating technology in their classrooms?
I would say ours is at 3.5 to 4 on that scale. I still think there's always work to do. But as far as those supports and mechanisms, we have teaching and learning facilitators at each one of our schools, and we have those trailblazer teachers that have been the leaders ever since the adoption of some of these instructional tools that we have they'll teach the classes. We have an internal university that they'll teach and they're very passionate about, so those are the go-to people. And we have a consistent ongoing PD that takes place for them at any time, and then the supports, but even within their schools, we have some very strong teaching and learning facilitators where they just get together, once a week in a room and they just chart things out and what's working, what's not working, how can I help you with these tools. And I can say to 3.5 to 4 because of all of the app requests that I get on a daily and weekly basis in my inbox to approve.
Mm-hmm. I would say we're at a 5. The reason I say that is over the past 2-3 years, we have actually hired teachers to come in and rewrite our curriculum for DCPS. And so they've had that opportunity to come in, author what this looks like. Then my team actually goes and helps support with the integration of it. And then also like the app requests, everybody wants their app on Clever. So we have to figure out how do we manage that and what's the approval process. So we get that every day. But the levers that we put in place to support that, so for DCPS, we have what we call a LEAP program, LEAP platform. These are our instructional coaches that are actually at every school. We have at least 1 or 2 at every school. So when you come in our schools, we have assistant principals. We just don't have assistant principals that do admin work. We have assistant principals of math and assistant principals of ELA and social studies or technology. So they're actually in charge of providing the professional development and training for instruction for those cohorts of teachers. So they're not just an AP, they're APF math with their expertise or science. And the principals actually choose which one they want to hire that year based on the needs of the school. So their job is to provide that professional development and weekly check-in and training for our teachers, which we actually train those LEAP coaches to actually go out and support our schools. So we have some foots on the ground in every school.
I'm going to answer as honestly as I can. We have a one-to-one initiative at the high schools. So I would say if I could take my high school teachers out of that average, my high school teachers are a 3 or 4. I mean, they have the access, the students have the access, we've given them the resources, they have the digital curriculum. We've really, I believe, supported and loved them well. My middle school and my elementary, they have not received one-to-one devices, so they're using what they have with their building funds. Some of our classrooms might have 3 desktops still, and that's it. Some classrooms might have 3 iPads, and they use that as a rotation station. So the rating them 3 is not fair because they don't have access like my high school teachers do. So it's all about the environment that we put them in.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're almost out of time, so I'll just ask you if there's anything else you'd like to share or any other thoughts you have on being insistent to the resistance to digital change in school districts.
For DCPS, I think it's important, and this is something we share. I share publicly with everyone, and some of my other tech directors look at me and frown when I say this, but I think it's very important that we look at technology and digital curriculum and realize that there are times when it's appropriate and inappropriate. So there are times when technology may not be appropriate for a certain level of instruction. And I agree with that, and I think it's okay for us to say that. But I also see technology as a lever for opportunity for students. So for us, we don't want to be known as the digital learning or the technology team. We just want to be known as the office. We're part of the Office of Teaching and Learning. So we want technology to be infused so well that you don't even call it technology. We just want to call it good teaching and learning. And that's something that I would behoove all of you to do. Don't make it a separate thing. Yeah.
I agree wholeheartedly with Dewayne, with what he just said. You know, as far as it's a tool to use in the classroom, it's an enabler for the kids, for the teaching staff. I think that we have to continue to guide staff and work with them on this whole process to move to digital. And there are opportunities in other ways. It doesn't have to always be just technology. It could be other tools that are being used. So I think we have to acknowledge that, and our superintendent even said that when in 2015 when we finally collapsed our one-to-one, and he said, you know, you don't have to use the tool all the time if you're not comfortable just yet. But we've gotten there. You know, we got so much more adoption over the years that I've been at the district, so you're seeing this gravitation towards more technology, and quite honestly, what's happening with us is we can't keep up with it because we have teachers that keep requesting all these different tools. I think it's really cool, but we have to build our system, and we have to figure out ways. We talked about this yesterday. How do we shift resources from, if we create efficiencies and we have a teacher that used to hand out, a resource teacher that handed out textbooks, digital, regular textbooks, and now that we're doing all this in technology, how do we get that FTE in our department to be able to support? We haven't gotten any more FTE. No. We continue to do what we have to do. So our plates are full and trying to keep up with it. But we have to make systematic change to facilitate that reallocation of resources and funding to be able to continue moving the needle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would say just it's the staffing, it's the priorities, it's the resources, it's the FTE. Who knew that it took 38 hours to evaluate a digital textbook? It does, trust me, it takes 38 hours to do it. Having the conversations, making sure everybody's at the table, understanding that somebody somewhere has to do the work, and making sure that everybody literally is involved in the conversation of what the work is. That would be the best thing I could think of. And love them. Gotta love the teachers. Gotta love them.
Thank you all for your insights.